All right, so what I'm going to talk about in this video is how much money you should actually save before graduate school if you're doing, say, a PhD program or something like that. So if you don't know me, I'm Associate Professor of Innovation Strategy and Entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people that help me out that I want to pay the favor for to help you out as well. So in terms of, going to graduate school, there's really no real rule in terms of saving for graduate school, in terms of thinking about how much you should actually save. There's not kind of a hard, fast rule in any sort of way, not that I've seen, not that I've sort of heard of anybody sort of thinking about, and particularly with, doctoral programs and things like that. But for me, I think a good rule is to multiply how much your expenses are for the length of time you're going to be there, and then multiply that by 1.5. So what you're trying to look at, you figure out your expenses for 4 years, and then you figure out that you want to multiply that by 1.5. That's going to put you to about 6 years expenses. And so why you want to do that is because it's going to give you slack resources to do well in graduate school. Sometimes things, in my experience and a lot of people's experience, it just takes a little bit longer than you think it's going to. Sometimes you don't find jobs right away. The market conditions change, and you just want to make sure that you have that buffer there before you go and jump into that. So what you would maybe want to do is save, maybe it's, $15,000 a year for 2 years, but then plan on the fact that it's going to be $45,000 a year. So instead of, the $30,000 is going to say you're going to need about $45,000 just to make sure that you have that buffer there, right? So those slack resources, and when things go wrong, that everything is going to be ready for you. It's going to be available to you. And, you can save. My recommendation would be to save before you go to graduate school. I didn't do that as much as I should have, and that was probably a mistake. I should have took an extra year to work a little bit longer and save some money to reduce the stress. And the reason why you want to do that is not because you can't get loans and stuff. So for me, I was able to get bank loans when I needed them, but it's difficult to get bank loans for a doctoral program because it's kind of in a weird class that people don't really kind of get. The banks don't really understand what's about, and so I had to finagle it in terms of just getting a line of credit. And, interest rates are not that good to do that kind of stuff. So if I were you, what I would look for is to save up for an extra year and save up that buffer. And then when you're saving up for it in that year, because it's difficult to work at the same time and to have an extra job that is going to be really meaningful, what I would do is, work a lot during that time. And so there's 3 things that you could do to prepare for graduate school in terms of saving for your money. The first thing is to only go to public institutions or private institutions that are willing to pay your way. There's a lot of private institutions out there, particularly in the United States, that are just, honestly, they're really they're very expensive for what you actually get, and so you just have to be very careful with that. Public institutions, like University of Michigan, Michigan State, things like that, generally are a okay deal. They're much more in the lines of where the value actually is in terms of calculating, whether you're going to get a return for this. But if you go to a private institution, I'm not saying, some of the premium private schools are really worth it in terms of what you actually get. So going to, I'm going to name them like Harvard, for example, Princeton, Berkeley's not really a private school, but kind of is in a lot of ways. Places like that, you do get a bang for your buck because, the education's really good and it's expensive, but at the same time, you do get a benefit from that. But there is kind of a tier of schools that are private institutions that maybe don't have the the cachet in the marketplace. And so you're going to spend a lot of money to have a hard time getting a job. I just don't personally think that's worth it for you to spend money on that. So look for public institutions, and generally those are going to be the best deals that you could do. And really look for ways so you can get in-state tuition, particularly if you're coming from another country. You might want to, and I don't know how to do this, it might be difficult to do this, but you might want to try to figure out ways to immigrate into the country first, whatever country you're looking for, and then, do the go to school and stuff. It's going to save you a lot of time. Or maybe there's deals. You have to have a conversation with different people to figure that out, in terms of maybe you live some states. You can live for a year at the state, in the state, and then after that, so you pay for out-of-state tuition then, and then after you pay for the in-state tuition. It just depends on what state you're in. And, it's really, there's a lot of negotiation that you can go through, and you have to talk about that and sort of get a sense of for that. So the other thing is, before you're actually going to school for that year, before that, and particularly in the summer, you could do a lot of side jobs that actually earn pretty enough that you can save a substantial amount of money, like $5,000 or something like that. And side jobs, you can get some really good ones, like Uber. You could do okay with Uber in a large city. But a great one is to do things like cutting grass, things like that. You just go out to your neighborhood and you say you're going to mow the grass for people, and you can actually do pretty well after your regular job in terms of doing that. Or, finding something in terms of what your regular job is and leveraging that. Sometimes you could do that as well. Maybe a programmer, you program on the side. Things like that can actually do you really, really well. And then the other thing is to do kind of like, almost like a ritual. And this, I was able to get a fair bit of money doing this. A lot of money actually, in terms of looking for graduate school grants and bursaries and scholarships and stuff like that. So just make it a ritual where you're actually just applying to them on a regular basis, where you're doing it. Maybe it's every night, maybe it's every weekend or something, where you go through and just apply to them. And you can get a substantial amount of money that way. And it also helps you do research, because that's what the name is what you're trying to do is just do research anyways, which is going to help you for your graduate school. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Do subscribe to the YouTube channel. I can do more like this. And I have, this is part of a little mini series, I guess, on sort of financial aspects of going to graduate school. So check these videos out, and looking forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, take care. Bye.